So it's really important to be true to yourself. Like, what is going to make me happy? Is going for the national job going to make me happy? Or do I have a family here and I'm happy here and I've got a role here and I want to raise my kids here? It's all part of this process. And I think more so for women than men, because we think about so many other people in our lives before we think about ourselves.
Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here.
Let me ask you a question. Does your career make you happy? Or is it based on what other people believe you should be doing? My next guest talks about how she puts happiness first. Today, I got the chance to sit down with Kathryn Tappen, host and reporter for NBC Sports Group. If you're familiar with Kathryn, you know she's in the middle of an impressive career. She serves as co-host of NBC Sports Group's coverage of NHL, and that includes NHL Live and NHL Overtime. In addition, she works as a reporter for NBC Sports Group's coverage of Notre Dame Football, Football Night in America, and the Summer and Winter Olympics. She also recently made her NFL sideline reporting debut on Sunday Night Football. I will tell you this, my biggest takeaway from my conversation with Kathryn is that she puts happiness first. It's not easy to do in a competitive industry that we've all chosen to work in. Make sure you listen as Kathryn talks about bouncing back after failure, why you should have an inner circle, how she handles being nervous, and of course, why you should put happiness over everything else. All right, friends, you ready? Let's do this. All right, Kathryn, welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Thanks, Jahaan. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yes. Okay, so I gotta complain and tell you something. So, and I'm gonna fangirl a little bit, so bear with me. So I totally needed a break from, this podcast is almost a year old and needed a little break during the holidays. So I batched a bunch of podcast episodes, got them all done. So there was no break. And I took a break for 8 weeks. And
good for you.
Thank you. And today is my first day back to recording. And I'm like, wait, are you kidding me? I'm interviewing the person that I listened to on your podcast, on her turf. I listened to your podcast to get tips because I had no idea what I was doing. So I was like, I'm gonna listen to hers. It's really good. And so I was taking notes and trying to figure out my voice and stuff. And here I am learning from you. And now I'm back and I haven't had a warm up yet. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to interview her today. All people.
Yeah, you can do it. It's all good. It's better that way. Sometimes it's better if you don't think about it too much. Just dive right in. So We'll go for it. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Game of Her Own, so I'm sure you're going to do a great job today. So I'm excited to be a part of your podcast. Any way that we can, enhance and uplift women through all the platforms we all have and the podcasts and et cetera, et cetera. I think that that's really important. So you're going to kick butt. No worries.
All right. I like it. Fantastic. Okay. So talk to us, take us back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
For me, it was at a very, very young age. I played sports my entire life. Anything I could get my hands on, I would get involved with, whether it was town tennis team, town baseball team. I played basketball with the boys growing up. There was a group of girls from my elementary school. We all wanted to play basketball. So Saturday mornings, our dads would carpool and we would head over to the local high school and shoot hoops with the boys. So I was always put a golf club in my hand and I was out there with my dad at our beach house in Maine on the sand, trying to hit sand shots. So I think it was very, very early on, just loving sports and being a part of it. My 8th grade yearbook, which, gosh, how old are you in 8th grade? I don't even know. 10,
13,
13, 14,
yeah.
somewhere around there. I put in my yearbook, I went to a very small private Catholic elementary school where there were only 20 kids in my class. So each kid had their own yearbook page. And so you could list your hobbies, your likes, your talents, your favorite class in school. And one of the items on the list was, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I put to be a broadcaster. I loved public speaking at a young age. I participated in a extracurricular activity called forensics, which was public speaking at my elementary school. And then I also did it in high school as well, and ultimately got good enough at it that I did it in Spanish. For my Spanish class. So I was doing public speaking, competing against other schools, whether it was declamation or reading poetry or whatever it was. So that combined with my love of sports, I was like, I was infatuated by Katie Couric. I loved watching Leslie Visser on Sundays on the sidelines. Those were kind of the women that I fixated my eyes on at a very young age watching television. And, before I'd go to school every morning, my mom would have the Today Show on in the living room, and, we're coming and going, getting ready for the school bus and eating our cereal. And, you're listening to Katie Couric's voice the whole time. Those were my inspirations. That's kind of how I thought I would like to be a broadcaster. Mm-hmm. Of course, you think you want to be something, and you don't know until you get into it if that's actually what you want to do. But that was the course I stayed on. And I stayed on that through college, and I studied journalism and political science at Rutgers while also competing. And it worked out okay for me. I love what I do. And so I guess at an early age, I was very, very fortunate. And I see that now looking back, because so many of my friends have changed careers many times. So many of my friends are unhappy in their jobs. And I just feel so blessed that I had this thought and I followed my gut. I followed what my heart was telling me, and it worked out okay so far.
So in elementary school, first of all, competing and then doing it in Spanish,
yeah, I know. My Spanish is not very good right now. So if you ask me to do that now, it's like my piano playing. People are like, oh my God, you grew up playing the piano? I'm like, yeah, I could probably play Heart and Soul right now. That's about it. I'm sure if I looked at it again, I could pick it up. But my mother's actually Hispanic. My grandpa came over from Puerto Rico. My grandmother, my mom and her 2 sisters are fluent in Spanish. So it was a course I studied in high school, and I loved it. And I picked it up pretty quickly. So it just was a natural course for me to start competing in both English and Spanish in high school. And my Spanish teacher, Sister Josephine, Hermana Josefina at my high school, I went to an all-girls high school, and she was so good at teaching Spanish. She made it fun. We watched movies like Selena to learn Spanish. We played games in Spanish with our classmates. And it was a fun way. It was a very interactive way to learn, which definitely struck a chord with me. I'm a visual learner more so than, for me, I can pick up so much more watching a movie than I can, sometimes even reading a newspaper. But anyway, so she made it fun, and I basically did a couple of competitions in Spanish. Yeah. So looking back, actually, I haven't been asked that question in a while. So it's kind of funny. I wish there was a videotape of that.
I'm sure one exists somewhere, right? Yeah. It's got to. Wow. So, okay, talk to us a little bit about, first of all, I'm thinking here, man, I was really bad in Spanish. I would sleep in class because in my head I was getting ready for soccer games. So I'm like, I have to take a nap. I was horrible. But I wonder if I had your teacher, what I might have been better.
I bet Hermana Josefina would get you going. I mean, God bless her. She's still at my high school at the Walsh Academy. I think she's in her 80s now. She walks the property every day. She's incredible. She's just, she's amazing. She lives her day for God, and she's very, very spiritual and obviously very engaged in the student's life. And I just think she's remarkable. She was one of my favorite teachers growing up. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll have her give you a call. I'll have her people call your people.
I was going to say, you're still in touch with her?
I'm sure I could get in touch with her. It's not too hard.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay. And you went to school in New Jersey, right?
Yep. I was born and raised all throughout childhood, grew up in Morristown, New Jersey. And then just as luck would have it, I ended up at Rutgers University, the State University of New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I had looked at a lot of other colleges up in Boston. My sister at the time, my big sister, was at Boston College, and I loved the idea of going there. But again, I wanted to compete. I wanted to continue my running. I ran cross country, indoor and outdoor track. I also played basketball and softball, but running kind of ended up being the sport I was best at, believe it or not, among all the others that I played. And I looked at a lot of Division III schools. But once I started getting recruited my senior year, Division I schools and having the opportunity to go to a really good journalism school really sang to me. So Rutgers worked out great. I ended up staying in state. So I didn't really leave the state of New Jersey until I was about 21 years old. So I love it. I'm a Jersey girl.
That's why I like you, because I'm also a Jersey girl.
Oh, really? Where are you from?
Born and raised Manalapan.
Oh, sure. Awesome.
Yes. The only difference
about you. I did my research on you. I did not know that. Okay, cool.
The only difference was at 18, I was gone. I was like, and we're out. At the time, I didn't appreciate it. Now I would give anything to go back to that house. But like, we lived in like the boonies, you know what I mean? Like, so like, We're off the beaten path, like surrounded by like 7 acres of woods. There was no sneaking out of my house, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like now I love it. Then I'm like, my friends can't come over and like sneak me out, or I can't do anything. I'm afraid of outside once it gets dark.
Right. Oh, that's so funny.
I wanted to get out of there. So at 18, I left and I went to college, and I only came back for the holidays.
Well, what's funny about New Jersey, and I kind of love this about it, it gets such a bad rap. Everyone has seen Jersey Shore and they've seen The Sopranos, and like they think that's where I grew up. And so what you mentioning like 7 acres, I mean, I grew up in a beautiful area, wonderful farms and country land. And, I grew up on a long country street. We had no trick-or-treaters. To this day, every Halloween, my mom texts and says like, oh, still had 0. I mean, she would have the basket of candy ready, and we had none. We had to get in the car and drive to a neighborhood to be able to trick-or-treat. But, that's what, people land at Newark Airport, they drive the turnpike and they go to wherever. And, that is not New Jersey. But I love that people hate on it. I'm like, bring it. We're stronger. We're stronger for it.
Yes. I mean, I left when I was 18. I came back for holidays, obviously. And then people ask me where I'm from, and I'm like, oh, New Jersey. I'm a Jersey girl. Like, it doesn't even I don't say Chicago, even though I've been here for like 11 years.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, it's interesting because I find that you kind of adapt to where you go. I mean, I lived in Boston for 11 years, and I grew up spending my summers on the coast of Maine. That's where my grandpa bought a house up there in the late 40s, early 50s. And that's been where my family summered my entire life. So, I kind of considered myself a part New Englander even growing up, because all my friends were going to the Jersey Shore or Cape Cod, and we would get in that car and drive 6.5 hours north to the beach for a couple of weeks in the summer. So going to Boston was really a nice transition for me. I just love that city. I loved being a part of the sports culture up there for so many years. Even when I stayed there but was working nationally, people still considered me, a New Englander. So I found that I kind of had a bit of an identity crisis. I'm like, well, I'm from New Jersey and I have this strong Jersey girl mentality and strength and confidence, but I feel like I'm a New Englander too. It was a weird feeling, but also I just found that became my home, and I still consider Boston a piece of me and New England a piece of me, and it always will be. So, but in my bloodlines, yeah, I mean, New York, New Jersey, like that's it.
Yeah, I feel like every New Jersey or New Yorker, that's definitely what they say, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so then you left New Jersey, you went to Rutgers, and then it was time to go chase your dreams. I mean, I feel like you were already chasing them since you were in elementary school, but like now, you want to be a broadcaster. Talk about how you got your first job.
Yeah, I feel like I was chasing it. And then in a way, it almost took while I was studying at Rutgers, I wasn't able to participate in the TV program they had. I wasn't able to participate in the radio program because I was competing. So I had a full schedule. In addition to my academics, I had practice every day. We had strength training. We had study halls. And so when you're an athlete, especially, I did 12 seasons through college. I mean, you don't have any extra spare time, even in your summers. So I felt like I should be doing more when I was at school, but I also had to prioritize. And I'm like, okay, I have 4 years to be a Division I athlete. I'm going to own this. I'm going to do my best I can. I've got the rest of my life to try and do this TV thing. Right. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated college, I had built a very bootleg tape, which I don't even know where it is. I asked one of my friends in my journalism class, she was studying to be more film study. So she got the camera out and borrowed it for the day. And I went around campus and did a bunch of stand-ups. I had like 3 coats with me in the car so I could change, make it look like I filmed them on different days. And I asked my friends who were athletes that if I could do stories on them. I asked one of my friends who was on the baseball team, who was going to be projected to be a number 1 overall pick. So I did these stories and I put them on tape. And I mean, I sent it out everywhere imaginable, you name it. I mean, market number like 150 and up. I was ready to pick up and move anywhere in the country and start my career. And I just kept getting rejection letter after rejection letter. And finally, my senior year after I graduated, CSTV launched, and it has now become CBS College Sports. But CSTV was college sports television. They were a new network created by the guys who created ESPN Classics. And they had a walk-on tryout right the summer after I graduated college. And a mentor of mine who I had met at Rutgers, who was also a former athlete, former tight end for the Rutgers football team, Tim Pernetti, he had stayed in touch with me after my junior year when I interned for him at ABC Sports. And he told me about this audition because he had since left ABC Sports and went to CSTV. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm going to win a walk-on tryout for their first sports broadcaster. They were kind of doing a campaign to create awareness for the new network. They had already hired a lot of their on-air talent, believe it or not. Big names like Michelle Beadle, Greg Amsinger, Adam Zucker. This was all part of our CSTV class of 2003, which I think is really cool because we're all still in the industry now. But I won that competition. It was a 2-day walk-on tryout. It was a sportscaster boot camp. They offered it up to anybody around the country. There was a girl I became friends with who was a barista at Starbucks out in the Midwest who wanted to be a sportscaster who came and tried out. There was a guy who had a passion for sports. He was a dad of 2 and he was like, I'm going to give this a try. So you had all walks of life. And then you had people like me who actually studied it and wanted to be a sports broadcaster and thought, okay, maybe this could be my big break. Well, I ended up winning that competition after the 2 days was over. And it just got my foot in the door. It didn't offer me a full time. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to be starting in New York City on this brand new network, but at least I got a couple reps. I was able to go in. I was able to do Friday night sports updates on the network. And that created a little bit more of a glamorous reel, if you will. I mean, it was a beautiful studio. They did my hair and makeup. Like you couldn't screw it up. And it was a much better tape than my Rutgers stand-ups around campus on a cloudy day in March. So once I built that tape up for about 1.5 years, I was still living at home. I was still working at the local running company store in my town, fixing people's running gaits and putting them in the right shoe that they needed. And I'm thinking to myself, like pounding my head against the wall, like this is not what I want to do with my life. But slowly and surely built up a nice resume reel at CSTV and sent it to a couple new places, one of which was Providence, Rhode Island. They were looking for their weekend sports anchor, weekday reporter. I was 23, 24, not even. And Frank Carpano, their sports director, who had been there for 25 years at that point, who was a dear friend of mine, is still a dear friend of mine, hired me. And that I really consider my first TV job, because that was meat and potatoes. That was like, go out with a shooter, edit it, come back, flip it around for the 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 11 o'clock news, anchor the weekends, be a part of the sports community in Providence, which ultimately is the feeder market for Boston. So it was a great place to go. And I picked up and moved in January of 2005 and away I went.
Wow. Okay. So
my first time out of New Jersey, that was it. And I didn't go too far. I went 3 hours up the road to Providence.
No, not that far at all. So, okay. CSTV, that was, at this point, you hadn't been a broadcaster, right? Like, no. Other than your inner, like, what you were putting together, your reel, going around campus. So this is your first shot. Like, what was that like? Like, you were going in, gorgeous studio, like you're doing some interviews, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And talk to us about that first experience, because I find so often that all of us, we're so ambitious, right? Everyone who listens to this, high achieving women, right? So we are so ambitious, and then we get the opportunity and it's like, ooh, here comes things.
What do I do now?
Yes, like nerves, anxiety, self-doubt. Like, did you have any of those things in your first job?
All of those things times 150. I mean, it was scary as heck. I walked in as all these, suited executives and network executives at the biggest networks in New York City that came over to, launch this platform. I didn't know what I was doing. They sent me out with a shooter and a producer, I remember, for a football feature at Hofstra University. And the producer was amazing. Sasha, I'll never forget him. And it was like, he just took me under his wing, told me where to go, told me what to do. And I think when you're getting in the industry, you have to lean on the people that have done it before. You've got to just listen, have them tell you at that point what to do, because I didn't know. I remember my first live shot in Providence, Rhode Island. It was for the 12 o'clock local news. I can't even remember the story. I think we were promoting the fact that the U.S. Women's Open was coming to Newport Country Club that following summer. And they send me out to do the live shot. I gather my story and I'm standing there in front of the camera and the producer's like, okay, what's your roll cue? And I'm like, what? I mean, the fact that I didn't even know what the roll cue was or what I was supposed to say as a roll cue, and then I started stressing about, okay, I've told her my roll cue. What if I don't say that? And then she doesn't roll the video. I was like super nervous, but the point being is that I think you just have to dive right in. And you mentioned all the women that listen to this podcast being ambitious. I mean, part of being ambitious is willing to listen to those around you to be able to do the good job that you want to do. And just sometimes you don't know, you just got to go for it. And that's kind of been, I've been put on broadcasts where it's been a very quick, hey, you've got to fill in for this. And it might be something I'm not familiar with. And it's a crash course of studying. But it ends up being more me leaning on my analyst at that point and trying to gauge, let them be the expert, not myself. So you have to be willing to, not think that you can do it all in that sense, and lean on the people around you that have done it before, that are experienced, that know what they're doing, ask questions, and also just go for it, because you're going to fail at some points, and that's okay. I tell people so many times, that want to do what I do, and they're calling me from college, and I take every phone call of anybody that wants to ask me questions that's really interested in pursuing this career, men or women. And I say, don't be so anxious to go to ESPN, right off the bat, right out of college, because you're going to make mistakes, and there's no doubt about that. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to be learning, and you can't learn on that platform, because if you make a couple mistakes, you're done. Make your mistakes at the smaller markets, make your mistakes where you're supposed to. That's part of growing. That's part of learning, paving the way. You don't learn how to play middle school baseball if you didn't start t-ball, if you didn't learn from the ground up what the rules are of the game. There is a process in place for everything we do in life, and there's a big reason why it's in place. So just stick with it, and that's kind of the way it was with me at CSTV, just eyes wide open, try and do a good job, but also know that I'm not the expert coming in here. I'm not the broadcaster at 23 as I am now.
So that's great advice. And thinking about, right, we all make mistakes, we all fail. It's inevitable. How did you sort of bounce back when you did have those moments? Because sometimes it can be so soul crushing, and you're so in it that you can't see anything else, right?
Yeah.
You just have these blinders up. And so what are some ways that you kind of bounce back when you made a mistake or you failed?
I think it's a matter of turning the page, and it's so cliche, and we hear athletes talk about it all the time. You can't dwell on it. There's so much good that you're doing with your career, and there's so much positive energy around your spirit and your passion for doing what you do. Focus on, for a moment, why that mistake may have happened, why you may have failed, quote unquote. I hate the word fail, but it's true. We may make mistakes. We may do things differently than we thought we were going into it, and focus on why it happened, and then fix it. Go in your mind and figure out, okay, how am I going to make this so that it doesn't ever happen again? I think that it's really important to self-evaluate. So I look at shows all the time. I still DVR a lot of my shows. I listen back to interviews I do. I listen back to podcasts I do, try and finding ways that I can be better. And, that's part of the job. That's part of being a professional, is you have to self-evaluate in addition to listen to the people that you trust that are evaluating you as well. A couple of my bosses who chime in all the time with feedback, constructive criticism, and I have to accept that. I have to learn from it, but I can't just always be relying on them to correct me when I quote unquote make a mistake or fail. I've got to figure it out myself why it happened. Was I distracted at the moment? Was I not focused enough at that point in time? Was there something else in my personal life going on that made me slip up or say something I didn't want to say, or give an inaccurate stat? I'm talking about like years ago. You have to figure out why these things happen and be kind to yourself. Especially now, there's so much going on in the world. We have so many added stresses while we're trying to do our job, right? We're thinking about our family and our loved ones. We're thinking about this virus. We're thinking about how the world is going to come back from this, how different it's going to look after this. And so all these things are going on in our head. And then, oh, by the way, I get to go live and have to do an NHL game. I've got to call highlights for 8 different games last night, and my brain was thinking about something else that happened in the day. And I've just got to continue to remind myself to focus. And that can be really hard, especially with all the other things that, women have on their plate in their lives. So when you fail, just pick yourself back up, brush it off, turn the page, focus on the next task or the next day.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Because there's no good in just staying in that moment.
Yeah, we can really beat ourselves up. And I know I'm my worst critic. I'm incredibly hard on myself. And I know that. And there comes a time where I just have to say, move on, Kathryn, stop being so hard on yourself. Don't dwell on this. We're already past it. By the way, no one else on TV probably even noticed what I noticed. So just stop being so hard on yourself.
Yes, I agree. Stop being so hard on yourself. And it's hard when you're your toughest critic. But then also you said something interesting, trusting in others for their constructive feedback.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you get feedback from someone and you're like, that's absolutely wrong? I don't agree.
Yeah. And I do say gingerly, take the constructive criticism of people around you. I don't mean let 100 people chime in on how your performance is. I mean your inner circle. And that to me is very important too. As my career went on, you got to keep that circle tight. You have to keep it close knit, especially the more and more successful you get. You just have to trust a certain number of people. But yes, I always get criticism from people that I trust, and some of it I agree with and some of it I don't. Something as simple as a director wasn't satisfied with my wardrobe selection because maybe it didn't look great with the background we were working with, or it sometimes certain patterns can tend to show up on camera with they look like it's like a hologram. And so, I have to, and I'm like, no, this dress looks great. What are you talking about? I look great on camera. Well, I have to take their professional opinion, because if it's causing the cameras to compete with one another and the lighting to compete, okay, that dress is going down, it's going to the donation pile. So something even as simple as that, I have to accept that kind of criticism. But also because of course I selected the dress, I loved the dress, but guess what, Kathryn, it doesn't work on camera. When it comes to my performance, I receive messages all the time from my bosses, from my producers, ways I can be better, ways I can phrase a question better, reasons why we should do something a different way. And that can be hard. A lot of the times, the way I find it is, even if I don't agree with them, I thank them. I say, I disagree. I'm at a point in my career where I say, I disagree. This is the way I saw it, but I respect your opinion. And sometimes it's a matter of, in that moment, taking it with a grain of salt, and then going back maybe later on that day or a day later and saying, okay, why did they really emphasize this versus what I saw? Let me rethink, let me put myself in their shoes and see what they're saying here. Because you take so much pride in your work. It can be really hard when you get that criticism, because especially when you think you did a great job and you're like, oh, I guess I didn't. Or let me program my brain and think the way they're thinking so I can see it differently just for a moment. You don't always have to agree, but someone else's opinion whom you trust can be very valuable in your growth and development.
Yes, I love that. And what I hear you saying is you're not relying on one person, right? You have a trusted circle and you do the work yourself. So you're going back and critiquing yourself and figuring out how you can improve. I do it all the time. And I encourage women, and including my clients, to create, I call it creating your own playbook. Once you get out of a meeting, right? And there's a lot of nerves around leading a meeting, and especially when it's the first time. And so people get a little nervous and they come out of it. I'm like, just talk about to yourself what went right, what went wrong. Also, go ask your boss, if you have that relationship where you accept their feedback and trust them, ask them how they think it went.
Yeah.
And then you keep writing those things down. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I have a playbook of all these things I do well and some things I need to work on as well.
Yeah. And I think, keeping in mind with that playbook that this is a team you're working with. The people that I work directly with, my producers, my bosses, my analysts on the set, we're all working together to achieve a great goal. And we're all working together to put the very best product we are capable of putting on the air. Deliver that game with the best enthusiasm and the best knowledge that we can to our fan base. So it's not like they have malintent. People generally have good intentions for providing constructive criticism. And again, this is why I say it's got to be certain people, though. It can't be Joe Schmo off the street that's criticizing you. That should go in one ear and out the other very quickly. It's got to be someone that knows you, that has a vested interest in what you're doing, because what you're doing is ultimately benefiting what they're doing. Or it's got to be someone that has a vested interest in you, like a friend or a family member who you really trust. And those outside opinions from the industry are very important as well, from people you love and care about, because they're thinking of you as a human, not me as what people at home see me as. My family sees me totally different than fans at home that have never met me before. So right. There's a lot that goes into it, but I do believe that when you keep your circle tight and you value the people that have your best interest at heart, they can provide you some of really the best insight into how you can become better.
Yeah, so this is great advice. Okay, you went to Providence. I went down a different hole, and then I was like, oh, we got to go back to Providence. So talk to us. So that was what you considered your big break. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. It was a break. It was a big break, but I was so new that I needed to go get my feet wet somewhere else.
Yes. And tell us what it was like going to Providence and like, you're just like ready to go and your dream is happening. Like, how are you feeling? Talk to us about it.
Yeah. Oh, I felt like a rock star. I mean, I signed, I signed my first contract. It was a 2-year deal. I was moving to Providence. I had never been there in my life. I drove through Providence to get to my beach house sometimes or to get to Boston, but went to this new place, got an apartment that, for the first time in my life, I was paying rent. And that was eye-opening. All of it was just so new. I felt very independent. I felt like I was finally getting my break. I loved Providence so much, and I was so young that I was like, I could stay here forever. Like, this is a great market. It was a beautiful place to live. It's an incredibly cultural city. I mean, they've got incredible food. They've got wonderful beaches and towns and cities and so many wonderful people. I met some great friends there. I worked at the number one station. NBC 10 is still to this day the number one station in the market. So all eyeballs were on you. I had friends that were going to Cape Cod and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard for the summer who would be watching us on the news or on the broadcast at the sports bars. And so you had a great audience. You had a really good group of people. And, so a lot of TV executives from New York City were coming up to their summer homes and seeing us on TV. So that, because I did get some feedback from people in the New York area from my internship. So that was kind of cool. And it was fun. One of my first friends that I met there, who I actually had met at Rutgers, but she was studying when I was studying, but she was in the meteorology department, was Dylan Dreyer, who's on the Today Show. And Dylan and I were both, I was the weekend sports anchor and she was the weekend weather person. And so meteorologist, I should say. And the two of us just kind of hit it off because we had the same schedules. We were both young. We were trying to enjoy being young in this new city, but also had crazy hours and, odd schedules. But we just became a little pack in Providence and it was really fun. We had a couple good producers we would hang out with. We'd play tennis together on the weekends. And I loved Providence. I loved it. And it taught me so much. And here I was thinking I'd stay there for a while. And after about a year and a half, I got a memo from a former boss of mine from CSTV that had taken over the executive producer position at NESN, New England Sports Network up in Boston. And he said, would you like to come up and have lunch with me? We are hiring a weekend sports desk anchor position. And I think we may be able to use you. And I was like, oh my God, that to me was, I'm not ready for Boston. I can't go up there. Like, what? I'd be a sports anchor in Boston. That's the coolest thing ever. I was really nervous for that opportunity as well. I think every door that's open to me, I thought, I'm not ready for this. I can't go there, but it worked out okay. And I'm very grateful for the time I had in Providence because actually the guy who replaced me, Joe Kayada, who came up, he was from Rhode Island, born and raised there. He still has that position to this day. He has gotten married to a producer at NBC 10. They have beautiful children. And this was a great spot for him. And I think, my gosh, and I always tease him, I'm like, had I not left, you wouldn't have had that job. But I mean, he's been there since 2006 and has made an amazing career out of being there. And I'm just so happy that he's still in that position and taking pride in that position because I felt it too. It was really a place I could have stayed forever had another door not open to me. And if I was a native of Rhode Island, I'd probably still be in that position.
Hey, it's Jahaan jumping in to share some exciting news for any of you who feel stuck, taken advantage of, and maybe even a little bit defeated moving your career forward. I'm putting together a small group of women who are ready to take their career to the next level with group coaching and accountability. After 18 years of working in the sports and entertainment industry, I know that it can be frustrating and emotionally draining as you try to take your career to the next level. And what makes you feel even more stuck? So many organizations don't give us the tools that we need to advance ourselves within an organization. I'm talking about skills like advocating for yourself, building your brand, navigating internal politics, and using your voice, all while being your authentic self. If you run into situations where you're feeling dismissed, sidelined, or passed over for opportunities, I want you to join us. Our group starts on February 23rd. Go to jahaanblake.com to learn more. I'm on a mission to make sure other women in the sports industry do not have to go at it alone. If you are ready to build a strong personal and executive brand, advocate for yourself without feeling like you're bragging, boldly use your voice to influence others, and be a change agent as you speak truth to power, let's chat and see if my group coaching program is the right fit for you. Head on over to jahaanblake.com to learn more. Or you can email me or text me or simply set up a 15-minute interest call to chat. I can't wait to hear from you. Okay, let's get back to the interview. To me, you appear to be very ambitious, right? And have an amazing career, and it's still going. And so it's interesting to hear you say, I went to Rhode Island, I went to Providence, and I was ready to stay. Like I was ready to stay in that market, and I was fine, and I was happy. It's so like interesting because sometimes people get to a job and they're already thinking about the next job.
Yeah. Well, I do that too. I felt the same way at Nesson. I was at Nesson for 5 years, and in 2011, my contract was up. The Bruins had just won the Stanley Cup. And so I had been doing Bruins games, and my platform was a little bit bigger. People had seen me broadcasting the Stanley Cup games. So I was getting calls from ESPN and from the NHL network to possibly leave Nesson and go to one of the bigger national networks. And I found myself at a crossroads because, again, I was at a place now I had been at for 5 years. Providence, I was at for 1.5 years. Nesson, I was at for 5 years. That was my home. Those were the people I worked with were my family. I had a beautiful home in Boston. I loved it. I was 3 hours from the beach where we go in Maine. I mean, I could have stayed. Then I was like, my gosh, here I come again. I can stay here forever. I see how this market is. They love their sports anchors. I can literally make a career here and stay here forever. But I had this little cherry dangling over top that was like, but go get the national gig. If you don't get it now, who knows when it's going to resurface, if ever, in your career. So, I was listening to one of your podcasts you did with Jessica Berman recently, who I love. I know Jessica from working at the NHL, and she said something so interesting to me that, the shield, right? The shield of the NHL was what grabbed the attention at the cocktail parties she'd be at. And everyone's like, oh my God, you work for the NHL. That's the glamorous job. And yet she left to go for this great opportunity at National League Lacrosse, where she can be something different and grow and still feel inspired by her job. And she said, everyone goes for the flashy jobs, but sometimes it's a matter of being happy. And in both of those situations, in Providence and Nesson, I was happy and I could have stayed there, and I loved my life. I loved my job, but I went for it. As you said, I am ambitious. I would have regretted it if I didn't go for the next opportunity. I thought and I hoped I can always come back here. I can always find a way to get myself back in the Boston market. But if I don't test the waters of how challenging that role would be and how awesome that would be to have a new challenge, if I don't try that out, I'm going to regret it. And I took it, and listen, it led to other things. But I think it's really important to be happy. I think you can go for the bright, shiny object and end up really, really miserable. So it's really important to be true to yourself. Like, what is going to make me happy? Is going for the national job going to make me happy? Or do I have a family here and I'm happy here and I've got a role here and I want to raise my kids here? It's all part of this process. And I think more so for women than men, because we think about so many other people in our lives before we think about ourselves.
Yes, we do. And I love that. It might be the title of the episode. It really is important to be happy. That's it. And like, you seem genuinely, no one can see your face right now, but you just seem genuinely happy. And you were glowing when you're talking about Providence, and like, you just, in like Nesson, and you just seem so happy with those decisions. And like I said, you could have stayed there forever. And if that happened, you would have been very happy doing that.
Yes. Yes. And I hope if NBC gets rid of me, I can go back to one of those places. I'm a big fan of, I find, and I've thought about this a lot during this pandemic, because I think, especially now during the pandemic, you have to manufacture happiness some days. I mean, there's a lot on our shoulders on everybody right now. And you don't wake up naturally optimistic as I did, back last year at this time. I think it's really important to find little things that make you happy, to find those glimmers of hope, because happiness is such a wonderful place to be, but it's not easy to get it when you're dealing with other factors that are weighing you down. And so, like I said, and what Jessica said as well, I mean, it's not about how much money can I make, how big of a job can I get, how many Instagram followers can I get because of how popular I am. It's more about what makes you happy. Sit back, turn all those devices off, and really think about, what is it? Is it where I live? Is it how close I am to my family proximity-wise with this job? Is it the people I'm going to be working with at this job? I mean, I know people that have similar jobs that I have who can't, who have a very hard time with the networks they work for or the people they work with. And I feel sorry for them, because I work with people I consider to be family members, and I rely on them and lean on them heavily. And I've had that great benefit my entire career, every place I've worked. Wonderful, wonderful people. So, but I chose wisely. I went to places when I was debating leaving Nesson, going to the NHL network, I met with so many people at the NHL network, and I was like, this is going to be a good fit. this is a better fit than ESPN and moving out to LA, because at that time that was right for me. And I'm not saying anything bad about those other places, but at that moment, the NHL Network was the right opportunity. So I went for it. And I think I'll never forget my dentist that I grew up with. I mean, he was like, every time I went back to him, no matter where I went in my career, when are you gonna go to ESPN? When are you gonna go to ESPN? And I'm like, I'm at NBC Sports, for crying out loud. I'm at an NHL Network. It doesn't, why are you making me feel bad about my job because you think the ultimate gig in sports television is there? Those things can be hurtful when people say things like that to you, but it's just public perception. It's not reality.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's not, you don't let them influence you, because you, how I'm hearing it is, you know what matters most to you. Mm-hmm. Like, you are very clear. And so you use those as your guiding principles, if you will, in making decisions.
Yeah. It's important to have those guiding principles. And, I thank my parents for that. I thank my big sister, who's, my most honest ally, I guess I'll say, very nicely. Yeah. Big sisters always are. Yeah. And you need to have that. You've got to stay the course, and values and priorities are very, very, very important to me.
And you interviewed people, like when you were going with the interviews, two-sided, I always say, you interview the company just as much as they're interviewing you. And it sounds like you were doing that when you were making your next move to NHL.
Yeah. And I think that's important to tell your listeners too, is it's not always about this person is hiring you. You're hiring them too. I had a hard time, throughout my career, always feeling indebted to the network or always feeling indebted to my agents. Like, oh my gosh, but no, they're working for you too. So I think that, that's a very important point you make there, Jahaan. And I think that people should realize that you actually need to test the waters with where you're going also. I remember I was working for the NHL Network in 2014. It was January. It was shortly before January, because NBC Sports reached out to the NHL Network to see if I would be interested in going to Sochi for the Olympics to help out with the broadcast for hockey. Liam McHugh is the number one hockey guy at that time and had a lot of games to broadcast throughout the day. The Olympics, you're doing 9 a.m. till midnight hockey games. So they needed a second host, and they reached out. NBC Sports reached out to me. Of course I said yes, like before they could even get the question out. But I ended up going to Sochi, and I had 2 weeks to decide. My contract was going to be up later that summer with the NHL Network. I had those 2 weeks to decide, hey, this is a great opportunity to interview, quote unquote, NBC Sports, right? Do I like the producers that I'm working with? How easy is it to work on this network? How supportive are the people around me as I'm the new person on the block and really only here for 2 weeks for the Olympics, and then I'm going to go away. They're never going to have to see me again. I don't work for NBC Sports, but I was a freelancer coming in to help out with the Olympics. And it ended up being a great thing because I really was taking inventory as I was there of the people I was working with. Because I thought, okay, if this goes well and come the summertime, NBC Sports offers me a full-time position to join their network, I need to be ready to think about, these are the people you're going to be working with. So it worked out great. It worked out great for both sides. They liked me, I liked them. And it was a no-brainer when the summer came around that it would be an opportunity to pursue at NBC and to pick up and move out of Boston and start my career at NBC Sports, which has been going well ever since. That was in 2014.
All right. So you've been there for almost 7 years now?
Yeah. I just did my 7th season of Notre Dame football. I always kind of gauge it on Notre Dame football because I came in August 2014 and my first assignments were Notre Dame football before I started hockey. So the hockey season starts in October. Yeah. Usually in a non-pandemic year, it starts in October.
So, okay. Tell us a little bit about, before we get to the rapid fire questions, tell us a little bit about what your experience has been like working in this male dominated industry as a female reporter in sports, in men's sports. I've been really excited to talk to you about this one thing.
I mean, it's been great for me. There have certainly been speed bumps along the way. And again, I think any industry will have those. But for me, I was an athlete, am an athlete. I have that sense of confidence about myself where I conduct myself the right way. I hold myself accountable. I remember going into the Patriots locker room at a young age as a local reporter for Providence, Rhode Island, and not knowing, wanting to make sure I did everything the right way and not knowing kind of what the proper way was to get interviews with players. And I would look at women like Jackie McMullen and Alice Cook, who was working at CBS at the time, and really just keep my eyes on them, learn by looking at the people you trust and you admire and follow in their footsteps in a way. Imitation is the highest form of flattery. And I just would make sure that I was doing things the way they were doing, almost be a little bit of a shadow without them knowing, maybe with them knowing, pick their brain. I would ask them questions all the time. but that helped prepare me for being a woman in this industry. And it can be hard at times, but I honestly, like, I love working with the guys I work with on set. I think there's a great dynamic with having a female host and male analysts. I think there's a certain way you can banter with each other. There's a certain cadence. There's a certain appreciation for both sides that comes across on camera. You know, we genuinely care about each other. We feel like a family on that set. I think that comes across. So it can be a great benefit to be a woman. I also find when I sit down an athlete or anybody, a coach, a general manager, an owner, whoever it may be, that, and maybe it's just the way I interview, but you can have a sense of compassion too, in a way. I find that sometimes athletes soften a little bit and they trust you a little bit more, maybe because you have that aura about you, that female presence, that sense of security, right? That motherly type presence. All women have something different than men have, and men have something. Listen, Adam and Eve, like, we're all different in that regard. So in a way, it can be a benefit. It can help lead you down a path that's really wonderful, being a woman in the industry. But yeah, you've got to deal with some stuff on the side, and there's locker room talk, and there's stuff, you know, as long as you don't take a lot of that personally, and you don't stand for it when it's coming directly at you, you've got to put your foot down sometimes too, and make your voice heard that certain things are not acceptable in the workplace, in the public platform, wherever it may be. So it's been fine for me. I mean, I think in anything, you know, you're going to be, listen, if I was in an all female industry too, there'd be issues, right? Like, there would be, yes. There's always going to be differing opinions and speed bumps, if you will. So just take them, ride over them, and keep going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And the putting your foot down and using your voice and speaking up when there is a situation where you don't feel comfortable, really, that can be with men or women, right?
Yeah.
Like you just said. So like sometimes I talk to my clients or just women in general who work in sports, and there's that, I don't know, nerves that come along with using your voice and speaking up and just being vulnerable. It's super uncomfortable. And you're like, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want them to think I'm difficult. Like, how did you like just move ahead and just speak up and use your voice when something wasn't right?
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes it was hard to, I think, especially early on in my career, you know, and I still certainly get nervous. I remember I had to speak to an all banking convention up in Boston at one point. I mean, I looked around the room, I was getting ready to get on stage. All they wanted to hear, I was kind of like the speaker in the middle of a bunch of different seminars they were in for banking. And I looked around the room, and I mean, I could count on one hand how many females were in that room, but there were just suits everywhere and men. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so intimidating, you know, and I feel like so vulnerable up here on this stage and, you know, as a female, and I had to dig within, you know, find that, be like, okay, you're fine. Like, they all are excited to hear from you because they want to hear what you have to say. Right. So just keep reminding yourself of that. But I think that it can be very nerve-wracking and very intimidating, you know, being a part of any group that's different. It's a matter of digging within and finding that inner confidence. Even sometimes you don't have it, you got to fake it. Just pretend it's there that day, right? Just pretend it's there and get going. But speaking up can be a very hard thing, and it can be scary. You know, there have definitely been times where I've had to speak up, whether it's publicly or behind closed doors, and you worry and you wait and you're like, oh gosh, here it comes. It's going to come at me. And you just have to brace for it, but just know that you did the right thing. You know, if you always do things the right way and you do what's right, you can't go wrong. People are going to not like it. There's always going to be an opinion when you do things the right way. There's going to be people that want to chime in about it. You know, I can put my head on the pillow every night and know that, well, I did the right thing. I may have taken backlash for it, but I did what's right.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's incredible advice. And it sounds like, again, you listen to the right people. Right? Like the criticism, the feedback, and you go to those people to talk about things when things aren't going right as well. And I guess I also think about, and oh boy, this makes me so angry, but the people, men and women, who believe that, you know what, women shouldn't be reporting on sports, right? Like, you know, like it blows my mind that still exist. And
I know. I mean, that's like, wake up. It's not 1920. I mean, come on. This is,
you know, so archaic.
Chicago, Leslie Visser. I mean, these are women that were broadcasting Super Bowls, you know, before I was born. Like, we're over it. We're over it. If you don't like it, turn the TV off, go to a different channel, and good luck going to another channel that doesn't have a woman on it. I challenge you to do that. So we're here to stay. We're here to stay. And there's only going to be more presence of females as we continue to uplift the women who deserve the roles because they deserve them. Right. the play-by-play roles, the refereeing roles, the coaching roles, the GM roles. These are amazing opportunities for women who deserve it. So
yes, Kathryn, giving me the chills this morning. That was good. I love that. All right. Are you ready for rapid fire questions?
I guess so. Yeah, I know. I get nervous with rapid fire, so fire away.
All right. What is first thing that comes to mind too? What is your favorite sports memory?
From myself growing up playing sports?
It could be anything.
I guess professionally, it would be broadcasting my first Olympics in 2014 in Sochi. Growing up, the Olympics to me, it was like park in front of the TV for 2 weeks in February and 2 weeks in July and August. Like, this is where I'm going to be. Love the Olympics. Always wanted to be an Olympian. Was never going to be good enough to be an Olympian. But actually, my teammate at Rutgers was Julie Cully, who I was so proud of in London, distance runner. Yeah, that would have been probably the biggest, pinch me moment for me. And I've had the opportunity to do many Olympics since then, which has been awesome. But the Olympics to me are just the Mount Rushmore of sports, the world stage, you representing your country, you train your whole life for this moment, raw athletes, a lot of them amateur athletes. And it's just so awesome to see the work they put in and to achieve that dream. So I'd say professionally, that would be it. And then I guess one of my best memories growing up playing sports was just always having my parents there, crossing the finish line at Rutgers in college from a cross country race where, you go out and you run 5K, you're in the woods, you're up and down hills, like you got a couple people cheering you on throughout the course. But then when you come to the finish line, and by the way, my mom would always run the course. At some point she'd pop up behind some tree cheering me on, but crossing the finish line, being so grateful it was over with and so proud of my time and watching my teammates come in the finish line and then devouring the oranges that were sliced, that the moms had prepared to rehydrate us. I mean, those are some of my great memories of being an athlete in college.
That's great. I love that. Okay. So tell me, what is something people always get wrong about you?
Oh gosh. That's a really good question. I was actually on a client call this week that we did for NBC, and somebody asked me about my kids, and I was like, I don't have children yet. And most people don't get that wrong, but I know it was one of those where I was like, how do I deliver this lightly? I didn't mind at all, but I felt bad. I had to tell him he was incorrect. I said, well, I have my godkids on my Instagram feed. Maybe he thought that those are mine, but most people don't get that wrong. But that was something funny that happened recently where I was like, I don't have children. I will one day, but not quite yet. People probably don't realize how goofy I am. I think I come across I am polished on TV and very professional. But when my guard is down, I mean, I am a total spaz, goofball, and the guys that I work with know it because it comes across a little bit on TV, they can pick up on it, or in commercial breaks, I sing all the time and I sing the wrong words to every song. And it's like a known joke in the studio, but I'm by nature, a super quirky, goofy person, which I think would come as a surprise to most people who are just used to watching me do television.
After talking to you for an hour, I can definitely see that. I would not be surprised, but I will tell you this.
I'm an Aries. It's makes total sense.
I was doing my research on you and I came across 3 websites that said you had children.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I'm thinking, one of them had the word gossip in the website. So I was like, I'm not doing that. So I finally was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to her company website and just read it.
Yeah.
And if there's kids in there, then she has them. If there's not, then whatever. But yeah, there are
out there. Whatever. Again, yes. You can't read what you see on the internet, folks. Let's call a spade here.
Kathryn, they had your body measurements up there. I was like, what is this stuff?
I hope it was. I'd love to see that.
It made me angry. I was like, why are you putting this up here? There's no need for this.
People have too much time on their hands. So, there's going to be all kinds of websites out there. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like for people that are legit superstars. I mean, Justin Timberlake's and, I don't know, everybody in the world. There's just so much stuff out there. You can't always believe it. It's, yeah. Take it with a grain of salt. Not everything on the internet is real. Most of it is not.
Correct. It definitely was not real. All right. I'm really bad at rapid fire. What is one food you wouldn't want to give up?
Oh my gosh. Would be probably my mom's lemon chicken and orzo. She makes it for me every birthday. It's so good. I love lemon chicken and French fries. Sorry. Can I have 2?
You can definitely have 2. And both of those things sound so delicious.
I know. And maybe both of them together. That would be even better.
Are you a morning person or a night person?
It's funny. I used to be a night person. Now I'm more of a morning person. I've come to appreciate the mornings a lot more. I love getting up early, 6 a.m., 7 a.m. before checking all my emails. The only time I'm not is when I have to work late. If I have to do a double header and we don't get home till 2 a.m, 3 a.m. during playoffs, then I have to get my beauty sleep. But I'm a huge sleeper. I love to sleep. Love, love, love. Need my 8 hours every day. I think it's so important to mental and physical health. But I'd consider myself more of a morning person.
Oh, all right. What's your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Me too.
There's your rapid fire. No hesitation. I am a Christmas junkie from the second the calendar turns after Thanksgiving Day. I'm like, here we go. Christmas is coming.
At least you're not doing it before Thanksgiving.
No, I'm not one of those, but I do leave my tree up probably through the month of January.
We left for Hilton Head on December 26th. So we didn't take down our Christmas tree on Christmas because who would do that? And we came back and it was obviously still up on February 12th. And so I was like, we kept it up for 2 more days. My husband was so mad.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
All right. What job would you absolutely be horrible at?
Any kind of negotiating.
Oh, okay.
I would be a horrible negotiator. I'd be like, yeah, that's good. That's fine. We got to a point. We're happy. Let's go. Yeah. So anything involving negotiating, I'd be bad at.
What product would you seriously stockpile if you found out they weren't going to sell it anymore?
Can you describe to the viewers or people that are listening on the podcast? I'm holding up my Chanel Glossomer lip gloss, number 804, the Rouge Coco. I cannot live without this. I take it everywhere with me. I have stockpile in my drawers. On days when I don't wear any makeup at all, there's always lip gloss on my lips, and it is this one. It's on the set. It's in every purse I own. It's in my gym bag. It's in my car glove box. Yes, that is the one item I would stockpile.
The fact that you picked it up and showed it to me.
Yeah, it's sitting right next to me right now.
All right. What is your favorite app?
Instagram.
Who is your biggest inspiration in life?
Oh, gosh. Probably my mom and my dad. I just love all the values they gave my sister and I, and, the foundation they empowered us with. It's, you can't ever replace that. And, you can't teach that. So they inspire me to be better every day. They also inspire me to appreciate what I have every day and to pave it forward to, when I have children and grandchildren in my life, I look forward to continuing those values that they taught me. So yeah, they're my biggest inspiration for sure.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Well, my question number 11 is, as a child, what did you wish to become when you grew up? But
a sportscaster. I will say I did in the back of my head. I'm like, if sportscasting doesn't work out, I want to be an FBI agent. So not the negotiator, FBI agent, as we've learned. But I'm like infatuated with like all that stuff. So maybe that'll be career number 2. You can interview me in 20 years.
All right. I'm down. I'm down. All right. Finish this sentence. The future of women working in sports is
there. It's there.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get better.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. This has been an incredible interview. Such a fun one to start and get back. Thank you so much for coming, and tell everybody if they want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
They can get in touch with me through NBC Sports. They can get in touch with me. Occasionally I'll look at my DMs on Instagram if they want to try and reach me there or send me a tweet. And as I mentioned earlier, my agent is Sandy Montag with the Montag Group. That's probably the most direct way that you can get in touch with me as well, because sometimes I don't see all the messages that come in, or I might miss one. So definitely, Sandy Montag at the Montag Group or Gideon Cohen. And it's been such a fun conversation with you, Jahaan, and I applaud you for the work you do with Game of Her Own, and just continue to uplift women and give the best advice you can and have people on. I love your podcast. So you're doing great work to pave it forward. So thank you for having me on.
Is On Her Turf coming back?
Yes. So we are working on building the platform of the On Her Turf podcast, and hopefully getting some more contributors to be on it, different voices, not just my own, to be the interviewers. And certainly as the schedule gets crazier with us with the Olympics, and we've got a Super Bowl coming up and then the Beijing Olympics. So we are in the process of recrafting it, but it will absolutely be back. But all of our episodes are on the Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to find your podcasts. We had some incredible interviews. I mean, my gosh, every week, probably like you, I was just so inspired by the women we got. And even some men. We had Dan Hicks on there, who's married to Hannah Storm. They've got 3 daughters. I loved getting his perspective on being in this household with 4 amazingly talented, strong women. So it's a great podcast, and I encourage everybody to listen to it. And yes, stay tuned. There will be new episodes coming soon.
Oh, good to know. Yes, I've been waiting. I listened to all the episodes. I need more.
Oh, you're like, did I get them all?
No.
We'll be back, especially with the Olympics coming in Tokyo. We've got some good people on deck, so stay tuned.
Good to know. All right. Thank you so much. So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.